Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Mars October Rant. Today, I wanted to talk about toxicity. You know, how like people will say that people are toxic, and just like with other things that I talk about, it's a very subjective thing. Because the same thing like when I talked about good or bad versus good or what's best for someone. Same thing goes for toxicity. A lot of the time, we'll say that someone's toxic, but then we actually talk to that person and we don't think they're toxic at all. Like we don't see the same type of toxicity that other people claim to see, and I just don't understand like why that is the way it is, because I guess you know people have a different way of interpreting the world and everything like that. But if you really come to think about it, or come around to think about it, because a lot of people do lack critical thinking skills, a lot of us have toxic traits. A lot of us, like humans in general, like everyone has their own shit that they have to deal with, shit that they do, and like no one's perfect. Like no one on this planet is completely perfect. We all have things that we do or things that we've said or habits, that can be considered toxic. And I just don't like that aspect of it too, where people will pretend like someone else is super toxic, but usually when someone's talking about someone else's toxicity, they're usually the most toxic person on earth as well. People like to shine a light on someone else, but don't like to recognize their own faults or what they do wrong. That's why, like, when someone's always talking about how evil and how horrible other people are all the time, they need to take a candle or candlelight or a spotlight or whatever and put it on themselves. But yeah, we all have toxic traits. Like we all do things that probably bother other people or things that we need to improve. So that's another, like I said, that's another aspect. Like people are so busy looking at other people, and I have something on my door. I took like a picture of Dr. Phil and I put like my own text over it, and it said, "Look at yourself before you look at another person," or something like that. And it's true, because it literally discusses that same like idea that people are so worried about looking at other people, but they need to look at themselves first and look within themselves. But yeah, it's just so funny when someone says toxic behavior. You're being toxic. This is toxic. But because then I've talked to that person, they're claiming it's toxic, and they may have a little bit of an annoying quirk or whatever, or some things that I dislike, but to call someone toxic, like that's another thing. Toxic, like that's such a like harsh word. Like it's a very powerful word to call someone toxic. It's just like when people, I made an episode recently about hate and hatred. To say you hate something is very strong. To say toxic, someone's toxic, that's extremely strong of a word. So a lot of people say, like I've said this, a lot of people say words and they really don't know the words that they're actually using. So when someone says someone's toxic, I'd really pay attention to like that person they're talking about, and pay attention to the person saying it, because again, a lot of people will try to say words, but they're not really using them in the correct manner. And a lot of the time people love to over-exaggerate situations, like that. Like they say, I was literally dying when I heard that joke. No, you weren't literally dying. You were figuratively dying. So just a reminder, when someone talks about like someone being toxic or whatever, like again, just try to pay attention to what makes them toxic. And like I said before, pay attention to the person claiming someone else is toxic, because again, the people that usually call others out for toxicity, they usually have some fucking skeletons in their closet as well. So, and like I said at the beginning, we're all toxic. We all have toxic traits. We all do shit that bothers other people or things, people think we're toxic for it. So, we need to stop looking at other people and try to fix ourselves, because then if we just focused on that, the world would be a better place in the end if we just all focused on ourselves instead of other people. But, people are always going to point the finger and look at other people. And, if someone's behavior is toxic, like that's another side that I want to address really quick. I am very aware, like I'm the first one to talk about this. I've talked about different things in episodes where I do call out people for their toxic behavior, and I will call out people for their behavior when it's unacceptable. Toxic behavior does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I was just trying to say we all perceive toxic behavior differently. And, like there definitely is toxic people. So I don't want this to be misconstrued. There are toxic people in the world. They do exist. But just be careful with what you label toxic. Like really look at it. Really think, is this actually toxic? Or am I just being a little bit emotional? I'm just annoyed because it's an inconvenience to me. Really think about if that person's toxic or not. That's all I'm trying to say. Like really analyze what you say and realize that people have different perspectives on toxicity. And just because someone says you're toxic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It's just your perception of you, because a lot of the time people don't see the full picture of who someone is. They only see certain aspects of someone's life. They don't really see like the whole picture of somebody. So don't take things to heart, especially people you don't really know when they call you toxic. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Mora's October Rants. I appreciate you guys listening. Have a good one. Good.